Democrats. So we are actually going to go into that. That is, keep that question in mind because we will be talking about the Democrats and where they are playing a role in this. So we'll try to answer that in a little bit. That's coming up.
Yeah, and I've seen a couple folks actually experiment with a bunch of different ways to talk about this. I've heard people talk about people versus billionaires, actually point the blame on the billionaire class or the ultra wealthy. Saw some of this happen with Occupy, where the people versus the 1%. Yeah. And then I see, please explain how long have you been organizing? How large a participatory group, or if I missed it. Yeah, Centers has been organizing for over 6 to 7 years, doing different types of organizing around electoral work, around campaigning, climate emergency campaign, Good Jobs for All campaign. And then there are hubs and chapters all across the country um, who are doing different types of campaigning at the local level around climate and the Green New Deal. But okay, let's see if this works. Yeah, Louise, we can't hear.
Yeah, sorry. For some reason, Zoom is not allowing me to share sound, but trying to figure it out. My apologies for the delay.
Yeah, let's see. Let me try to share if I can try to do it. Okay, let's see. Yeah, we shifted this to a webinar because there are over 1,700 people that signed up. So learning the technical difficulties of that. And Zoom is getting in the way. Maybe it is the billionaire class that is trying to make it difficult for us to bring folks into what an oligarchy is and how to end it. Let's find the video. Well, and if we can't find the video, let's try to do this for another minute or two. We'll pivot and shift. Yes,
It's
sabotage.
sabotage. I just saw that. Um, you guys are saying some really good stuff in here. Well, we do appreciate all this activity in the chat. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, while we're waiting for the video, we can do some experimentation of what was going to be shared. But yeah, Aru is talking about this, like the result, we talked about the quality of life for folks has gone down in many, many ways. And many of us see this with like the increasing costs of everyday goods, from eggs right now to gas to housing to education in this country. And all of this is happening while the climate crisis is like worsening in the background, and damage is being done to our planet. And this has left a lot of people feeling like our current political system doesn't work for them. And it's because it does not. And in a lot of ways, it was not built for everyday people to have a voice, and to be able to like shape and inform what governance in this country looks like. And Trump, like Rue said, took that anger that people felt and took the sense that like the system doesn't work for them, and he redirected it. And he said, I'm going to blame immigrants. I'm going to blame trans people. I'm going to blame DEI policy. And that he said he could solve it. And that's how and why a lot of people voted for him. And now, because Trump has been elected and he's in office, he has plans to accelerate that move towards corporations completely capturing our current government and political system. And in order to do that, he needs to keep blaming other people for the reason why our lives are not getting better. And he needs to like suppress protest, as we see happening on college campuses right now across the country. And he needs to suppress dissent. And so this means that we are like ever more so increasingly sliding towards an authoritarian state. And this might all sound very, very heavy. And there's no denying the like pain and suffering that Trump and Elon Musk's decisions are causing as they come out day by day in the news cycle and will cause. But the good thing is, this has happened in history before, and nonviolent movements of everyday people have overthrown dictators, they have overthrown authoritarians, they have ended colonial regimes, and stopped apartheid. And already people have started to act, and I've been like so inspired seeing the people across the country who are rising up, who are like risking their lives to stand up. I was just at an action this past weekend in New York City, But yeah, people have already started to like rise up and resist. Like on February 3rd, federal workers blocked Musk's Doge workers from like entering an administrative building to gain access to government payment systems. And since then, thousands of workers and everyday people have like sprung into action, calling their senators, blockading doors, rallying to pressure Democrats, etc. And so if they can do it, if people are mobilizing, if people are organizing, and if people are taking action, we can do it too. And so we're going to talk about some of the like short-term strategy, long-term strategy for how we, as organizers in this movement and in Sunrise, get there. So I have a couple questions for y'all before we get into some of the like key takeaways from this section and then talk about our plan to meet the current political moment. But the first one is like, what are you afraid might happen with Trump back in power? First question on the screen, and want to invite people into some of the answering of this question of like, yeah, what are you afraid might happen with Trump back in power? I see the collapse of our economy. Sarah says, Melissa, World War III. Ooh, these are coming in very, very quickly. Aiden says him holding power for longer and a slide into autocracy. Yeah, there could be a world where it doesn't feel like elections in the next few years are guaranteed, given, you know, the way Trump has been moving first few months of him being in office. Eradication of our First Amendment, Giuseppe says, irreparable climate and federal damage, deportations, unlawful detentions, the dismantling of public education. There are so many things to be worried about with Trump back in office. The next question is, over the course of your life, what are the moments that the US's slide towards oligarchy has affected you? I think it's really important to bring in the ways that we relate to society and politics. And so also want to invite folks to share, over the course of your life, what are the moments that the US's slide towards oligarchy have affected you? Attacks on higher ed, housing. Yeah, my mom lost her house in 2008 when Barack Obama decided to bail out the banks and not everyday working people. Rising housing costs in the 80s, Roe versus Wade, my neighbors being killed by police, overturning of the Chevron doctrine, strained relationships with my parents, not getting healthcare. Yeah, and I'll take like 30 more seconds for people to share, because I think it's really deeply important. Like, this is not abstract. Our lives are deeply impacted and affected by the current oligarchy that we are living under, have lived under in this country, in quote unquote the United States of America. Great. And as those are coming through, I just want to go to the next slide, because we're going to move on from this section, but I just wanted to like ground in a couple key takeaways. I know folks are like, why are we saying oligarchy? What is the definition of oligarchy? So first, the richest people set the direction of our country. And this is getting worse under Trump, and this is called an oligarchy. And if you like look at the laws, you look at the rules, you look at the loopholes in society, this actually pisses me off, but they have been set up to benefit the rich. And this is nothing new. If you like look back to the origins of this country and the origins of our founding, like the founding constitution, like it was built to give wealthy individual increased power over our politics. I don't like that. And I'm sure many folks here don't like that. And so we need to do something about it. The second key takeaway is that Trump, Musk, and their team are breaking laws and illegally seizing power, and they're driving us towards authoritarianism. And for folks who are like, what do we mean by authoritarianism? This is a method of rule that suppresses political freedom, using levers of control to shift power away from the people, away from the public, towards a ruler. In this case, Donald Trump and his billionaire buddies. The third takeaway is that we cannot stop climate change under this current political system. At a time when we need to bolster our government institutions, we need to strengthen them to address the climate crisis. We have a president who is doing the complete opposite and say, you know, he's opening drilling on public land for more oil and gas at a time when science says that we need to be doing the complete opposite. So we cannot stop climate change under this current political system. And then finally, Trump and his cronies will create scapegoats. He'll use immigrants, he'll use DEI, he'll use trans people to blame as scapegoats for the conditions that are worsening every day for people to prevent us from actually placing blame on the real culprits who are billionaires and the ultra wealthy. And so, yeah, we ID a problem. It is the oligarchy and it is the ultra rich, and we need to be organizing to weaken their power so that everyday people can govern in this country. And so you might be wondering, like, Deja, I hear the key takeaways. You've talked a little bit about oligarchy. You've talked about Trump and authoritarianism. Like, how do we stop this? It's probably why we came to the call. So I'm going to kick it to Ashmu to talk a little bit about how to take down an oligarchy.
Thank you, Deja. That was a lot. Thank you so much. I just noticed we put a lot in the chat. I was reading while Deja was speaking, and you know, we have some very legitimate concerns, and I think it's important to take a second to just kind of feel those feelings before we move on, transmute them, and kind of release them. So if we can all take a collective big breath together and release before we move on to this next section. Okay, here we go. Ready? We're gonna go in. 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it and release. Good. Shake it out. Shake it out. Because we're going into the why you're here. I think this next section is how to take down an oligarchy. I'm really excited. We're gonna, everyone, put your good feelings out because we're gonna hope this video works. Let me introduce it for a second, and maybe that will help. So we're gonna watch the beginning of another video. This one is by a scholar by the name of Erica Chenoweth. If you haven't heard their name, they're an American political scientist, professor of public policy at Harvard and the Radcliffe Institute of Advanced Study. They are very well known for their research work on nonviolent resistance movements. Ooh. Chenoweth co-wrote the book Why Civil Resistance Works, hence the name of this video, and also organized an international team of scholars, and they looked at major violent and compared nonviolent changes. They compared over 200 violent revolutions and over 100 nonviolent campaigns. So I just wanted to give you a little background that this is someone that is important to listen to. As you watch this video, it's a couple minutes long. Just take some notes, maybe anything that sticks out to you, what surprised you, or made you think in a new way. So cross your fingers, everyone. Let's play the video.
And I have a solution. I can potentially just play the video aloud as we watch this. So Lou, start from the beginning.
We are living
Yeah. Can you start from the beginning, Luis? Great. And then click play now.
in an age of mass political participation. 2/3 of eligible US voters cast a ballot in the 2020 election. As much as 10% of the US population participated in demonstrations over the police murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and other Black Americans during the summer of 2020, according to polls. In 2018, nearly 5,000 workers were involved in strikes and other work stoppages, the highest figure since 1986. Beyond the US, mass movements in Sudan and Algeria even overthrew long-standing dictators in recent years and secured access to reproductive health care in both Argentina and Ireland. In the early 2000s, Erica Chenoweth, Frank Stanton Professor of the First Amendment at Harvard Kennedy School, has systematically and empirically historical and contemporary mass movements, focusing on the efficacy of nonviolent movements. The latest in Professor Chenoweth's extensive work on the topic is shaped both the questions they fielded about civil resistance, as well as lessons they've learned from activists over the course of their own participation in nonviolent movements in the US. On this episode of Behind the Book, we speak with Professor Chenoweth about their new book, Civil Resistance: What Everyone Needs to Know. Professor Chenoweth's goal was to synthesize and analyze the robust scholarship on civil resistance to make it more accessible for practical use. They start by laying out what civil resistance is.
Civil resistance is a technique of struggle where unarmed civilians use a wide variety of methods to actively confront an oppressive opponent without using violence or the threat of violence.
and what civil resistance can look like.
Methods can protests, boycotts, strikes, go slow, stay aways, and various other forms of economic, social, and political non-cooperation. It can be the creation of illegal or transgressive alternative institutions, like alternative constitutional conventions or judicial systems or schools or alternative media. The idea is that when people use these types of techniques and sequences that increase their political pressure over time against the opponent while also managing the risk to people for participating, that they can achieve extraordinary political, social, and economic breakthroughs that kind of surprise observers who kind of maybe underestimated how powerful people power can actually be.
Professor Chenoweth thinks that observers tend to be surprised at the success of civil resistance movements because they're organized by marginalized members of society. In other words, by those who have been barred from traditional positions of power. But civil resistance movements enact a different kind of power, one contingent on mass participation at the grassroots level.
The theory of change is that there's no such thing as an opponent that is monolithic. And there's no such thing as an opponent that has total control of the population all the time. Instead, opponents rely on basically everybody in the society to just go along with things. And that when people actually stop cooperating and stop going along and stop thinking that it's in their own best interest to just play along with the power, that's when you start seeing these openings where dramatic transformations can take place.
Professor Chenoweth has seen a lot of variability in civil resistance movements. For example, in their leadership structures, their use of digital media and technology, and, importantly, their origins.
One of the most interesting things is how totally unpredictable they are. So very few factors that seem to systematically predict the onset of a mass uprising, but the most important relate to the capacity of the population to mobilize effectively because of a recent history of, say, labor strikes or protests, because of a growing youth population, because of the distribution of cell phones, for example, which help people to communicate, and then noting the beginning of authoritarian backsliding.
Professor Ch is often asked, nonviolent resistance is at all effective against an authoritarian regime or an overwhelming military. Professor Chenoweth's research suggests that the answer is often yes. Professor Chenoweth outlines 4 key nonviolent resistance campaigns do well, that violent campaigns do not. The first is that nonviolent campaigns are much better at eliciting and diverse participation, which gives them more social. The second thing is that nonviolent campaigns are more effective at causing defections, particularly among elites and security forces. These defections can lead to key moments of political crisis for those holding power. The third thing nonviolent campaigns do well is create a large and varied enough movement that they have a much wider set of available tactics to draw upon than do violent movements. Last, nonviolent campaigns maintain discipline in the escalating state repression more effectively than violent campaigns, allowing them to deter the worst kinds of state violence. In fact, Professor Chenoweth has found that over half of the nonviolent campaigns undertaken between 1900 and 2019 have succeeded. Only a quarter of the violent movements during the same period succeeded. Not only have civil resistance movements seen more success than armed uprisings, they've also suffered fewer fatalities at a ratio of 22 to 1. But Professor Chenoweth is careful not to assign moral weight to nonviolent techniques over violent ones.
We don't
They
share
believe
we
peoples
stopped at
around the
the
world
6-minute mark.
should
Sorry.
use strategies they think are most appropriate to protect themselves and their communities.
What this book is trying to do
Oh, someone told me to pause.
Yeah, sorry, we usually pause at the 6 minute mark.
Great. Okay, let's keep it moving then.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Well, I hope we all learned
Okay.
a lot, took lots of notes. So thank you so much for that, checking in on us there. Yeah, that was a great video. Take a minute and write in the chat anything you took a note on. Is there anything in this video that surprised you or made you think in a new way? Let's see. Oh, where did my chat go? Create power relies on the people. Yes. How successful nonviolent movements have been. Civil resistance can cause defection. Nonviolence. I'm seeing a lot of notes on nonviolence. That can be more effective. Good. I love it. We're here for hope. We love that. The defection was really interesting. Multiple prong approach. Important. Oh yeah, we were suggesting in the chat, to become our own journalists and recording what's going on around you. Lots of people reflecting on the defection set and a nonviolence. So great. Thank you for sharing. One thing I just want to repeat. Mass protest movements can topple oligarchies and authoritarians. It is in our power. I'm going to say that one more time if you want to take notes on that, because this is like just a big key takeaway from this section right here. Mass protest movements can topple oligarchies and authoritarianism. Authoritarians. It is up to us. It's in our power, and that's why we're here on this call together. All right, so moving right along, we're gonna go into a little bit of share and tell. This is part of the teach-in where we really want you to get involved. So we're going to be splitting into breakout rooms. We'll be giving everyone about 15 minutes to go in. When you go into your breakout rooms, let's first of all remember our norms. We're keeping our head in the game, our, hand on the ball, eye on the prize. We're talking about oligarchies. Let's make sure we create a welcoming environment for everyone. Let's try to give everyone space to speak and not overtalk everyone. Maybe if someone wants to set a timer. But once you get into the breakout rooms, maybe go around, share your names. And then we have 5 case studies that have actually happened. So you can actually see what went on and what we can do about it. So take a second to read the case study out loud together and then discuss the case study and then this question, because this is what we're going to be coming back to when we come back in a group. And it's, what factors do you think are key to having a dictatorship fall? So once again, once you're in your breakout room, intros, read your case studies, and then just write down, maybe someone be a note taker and write down any factors that you notice in all of the case studies are key to making the dictatorship fall. And then we'll come back and we'll discuss a little bit together, but I hope you enjoy this time together and get to know your fellow people. Next slide. All right, we are going over 5: Serbia, American Gilded Age, Brazil, Chile, and South Korea. So we'll be setting up breakout rooms now. Thank you, just as this midpoint in the teach-in. Thanks everyone so far for just dealing with us with our technical difficulties. Everyone's going in the breakout rooms. For those of you joining live, everyone is getting split up into breakout rooms, but myself and Deja will be staying on. And for whoever's live, we'll be doing the case studies here in the main room. Sweet, sweet, sweet.
Great. And then once we get enough folks who join the breakouts, we'll start to facilitate for the live stream for folks. And we're going to pick a case study. And I don't know if there's a way to get feedback from folks in the live stream. So we'll just pick the American Gilded Age as the case study that we dive deeper into. And then Ashmu and I will talk a little bit about, after we read it, what factors were key to having the dictatorship fall. Cool. No worries, Katie. Yes, the slide just had the case studies and the groups will pick one that they want to go deeper in. Yes, and really encourage talked about organizing and connecting with folks, like encourage folks to go to the breakouts to be like in dialogue and discussion with folks about these case studies.
Yeah, it'll take a second as everyone filters in. If you're the only one in the room, just give it a moment so people can get added in.
And I think Ashmu, we should just get started because I know we
Yeah.
have 15 minutes. So I'm down to read, we can read paragraph by paragraph. For the folks that are live streaming or maybe just hanging out here, we're going to read through the American Gilded Age case study and then dig a little bit into how we think these dictators and authoritarians were toppled. So in the late 1800s, America was ruled by robber barons. Some of us may remember this from like American history, US history. But the oil and steel industries were unchecked. Corruption ran rampant and inequality was soaring. Although elections were full of vitriol, there were few real policy differences between the Democrats and Republicans, both of whom backed the robber barons of the era. Gilded Age presidents are often forgotten because they achieved little in a time of polarization. Just a few decades later, the country had turned to the progressive era, where labor and social reform set the stage for what would later turn into the New Deal. How did the country turn the tide? Ash, to you.
Sorry. So one key part of this were labor strikes. So during industrialization, working conditions were awful, as we have come to know, and unionization was rising rapidly. So there was the Homestead Strike of 1892 and the Pullman Strike of 1894. Both were major points where unionized labor shifted the dynamics of the country. So both times, enormous strikes were broken when the US government, either through the courts or through military force, ended mass strikes and they arrested strike leaders. There are only two examples of a standing pattern. So combined with huge inequality, this led millions of people, especially the unemployed, to the March on Washington and form industrial armies to demand relief.
Great. And this crisis between capital and labor led to more widespread skepticism of the government and the rise of a political party called the Populist. As the cruelty to workers was exposed, middle-class reformers began to oppose the status quo. The Populists wanted shorter workdays, government ownership of railroad companies, and regulations on the rich. Labor strikes were coupled with social reforms, exposing the corruption of politics and the exploitation of workers. While the Populist Party failed, collecting 22 electoral votes in 1892, it led to the rise of the progressives.
So the progressive movement was a wide umbrella term for organizing across the country to curb monopolies, improve public life, expand the right to vote, reduce inefficiency, and increase education. It included suffragettes campaigning for the right to vote, love that, Black students pushing for desegregation, and reformers against corruption. This movement was focused locally at first, and then elected mayors in many key cities, but also heavily influenced Theodore Roosevelt. And his reforms in the early 20th century led to the expanded voting rights and the labor protections that later allowed labor unions to strike for the New Deal.
Great, thanks, Ashmu. Also, I see folks clarifying in the chat. We're reading this for folks who are on the live stream, since they, and these are folks who are like streaming from YouTube, streaming from other platforms. Folks should be in their breakout groups having a separate conversation about the case study that they picked. So yes, this is on purpose. This is intentional. We are facilitating for folks who are on the live stream, and then maybe folks who are hanging around. But great. I think from here, and if folks just leave the breakouts, you can join here and we'll also pick up a discussion. But from here, we now dig into the question of what were some of the key factors that contributed to the decreasing of the power that the robber barons in this case had. And so maybe I'll take a second for folks to just drop in the chat some of the answers to this. And then Ashmu and I will do some back and forth discussion. Because there are a lot of things happening with, labor strikes, organizing. So yeah.
Are we able to try get these people in breakout rooms again? Because it looks like some folks were trying to get in there, but we're the only ones in the breakout rooms.
Ashman, Deja, just continue as
Okay.
as you're going.
Okay.
I'm doing my best.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. Okay. Well, then for you that are on here, we will do our own breakout room. So once again, if you're just joining, we're the American Gilded Age.
Now, Ashman, do you want to do some talking about what factors we think were key to having the dictatorship fall in
Oh,
this
yes,
case?
sorry. Okay. So the first thing for me definitely that stands out is the key part of the American Gilded Age were labor strikes. So we noted two, if you want to write those down, so look up later, the Homestead Strike of 1892 and the Pullman Strike of 1894. So that's when we're getting, a lot of people to, there were mass strikes. It was the first time they were doing like these mass strikes.
Yeah. I feel like in addition to labor, like striking, mass non-cooperation, there was also mass mobilization, which is something that I've been sort of interested in why there are not so many people currently like in the streets in mass. I know when Trump got elected in 2016 when I was in college, people were like taking the streets on the campus, and it's been very fascinating to see the demobilization, I guess, happen in the midst of this, though there is activity being picked up. And so yeah, it says that millions of people, especially those who are unemployed, marched on Washington to like demand relief. So yeah, I think in addition to like the labor strikes and labor organizing, and engaging in acts of like disruption, also just having millions of people mobilize and take to the streets, and march to demand relief seems like another key tactic. Like people being or not happy with the current conditions and like making that known through like public displays of action.
Now, I think to add on, even to get there, like the strikes were a starting point, and then you're getting this cooperation from everyone to go and march on Washington. I don't think, I mean, we don't have the timeline here, but might not have been quick at first, but people were getting upset, like within their work groups, basically, and it started to spread and spread and spread. And yeah, and unions, yeah, all of that. It all like happens slowly.
Yeah.
And then just that turning point to going into the unions, which is, I think, super key. What ended up being in those unions pushed for all the stuff some of the stuff we have now.
Cool. And then I'm gonna share one more that I see, and then I see some questions coming up. So I think the other element of this when thinking about how to topple a dictator is just like coalition. There's a mention at the end of this about the progressive movement being like a wide umbrella of different organizations that are like coming together, folks who are doing work around, improving public life, curbing monopolies, folks who are like expanding the right to vote, increasing access to education, like suffragettes, Black students pushing for like desegregation. A bunch of different people came together under an umbrella, the progressive movement at the time, to like curb the power of these robber barons and these oligarchs. And so thinking about like, what does that mean currently when there are so many different groups of people who are organizing around Palestine, organizing around climate, organizing around the carceral system? Like, how do we actually build our power by coming together in this moment and resisting Trump's attempts at pushing this country, or backsliding our country further into authoritarianism, which is something that, yeah, is just like interesting to look at from this case study. Like
No,
coming
so
together across sides or across our
yeah,
like two differences, to resist this miss and his billionaire buddies.
yeah, all of them. Yeah, that's perfect. I see that too, because they, at the end of this case study, once you read it, they came under the Progressive Party. So I see so far, we've made note of labor strikes, going into unions, the disruptive power of everyone coming together, marching, striking, and like stopping time there, and the unions, and then all these different groups of people found themselves filtering in under this party.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And maybe there's one more hidden in here
yeah,
that is mentioned a little bit in the first paragraph around like eventually from here we shifted towards the New Deal.
mm,
And it just seemed like there was a vision around the corner, given the like, stage in the 1880s or the American Gilded Age of like a world where everyday people had a social safety net to catch them, and just thinking about the vision of the New Deal. And we trained a lot in seminars in the past about the Reagan alignment or the New Deal alignment, and like thinking about all the things that were passed, Social Security, although that like excluded domestic workers and agricultural workers, were mostly Black and brown people. But there was this vision about the New Deal that was like, we deserve to build a country that like provides a social safety net for everyday working people. Is just interesting to also think about right now, like what is the vision of society that, someone other than Trump and Project 2025 are like putting forward or putting forth. And it feels like there is an absence in some ways of a
Yeah.
vision of where we go from here, which is something else that I'm thinking about when I think about the ingredients of like, how do we get out of this? We need to provide a compelling vision for people in this
Yes.
country about how we get out of this, because defeating Trump is not a vision,
Right.
And so who is leading on a compelling vision for society? And what role do organizers and movements play in creating and providing that vision?
Yes. Wait, we have like 3 more minutes till everyone's back in the breakout room, but just for me slash anyone else in the chat, can you just explain the New Deal, not Green New Deal, the New Deal really fast? Just like a quick background.
Yeah, the New Deal was like a suite of different policies that were passed under FDR, coming out of, I think, the Gilded Age. It was, I like to think about the alphabet soup where we had the like Civilian Conservation Corps, the Tennessee Valley Authority, where they were like building electric power lines in rural communities across the country. It was just like a massive effort to like invest in people and communities across the country, also to like regulate big banks and finance. A lot of those things came up. Yeah, Taylor said this, it saved us from the Great Depression. I'm sure we have other experts too on the New Deal. So if people want to like drop in the chat some of the things, yeah, I just remember the alphabet soup was often mentioned when I learned about the New Deal in history classes. Yeah, Social Security came from
Oh,
the New
Social
Deal era.
Security. I did not know that.
Yeah, so like huge expansion of public programs. There was like funding for artists to be able to like, I think it was like the public, I don't want to get that wrong, but there was like funding for artists to be creating like across the country. Yes, the funding of the national parks.
Oh, so
There
basically
was,
everything that Musk is trying to take away right now is from the New Deal.
yeah, yeah.
Great.
The whole arc in history, because after the New Deal, there came the like Reagan alignment, the era of neoliberalism, where there was again a tax on public goods, trying to like push for the privatization of public goods, and we like have trained on that in Sunrise. So interesting to think about, like we are in an arc or a battle between people versus billionaires, and we are not winning right now. But the arc of history has shown us that like when we organize and when we build power, we can actually take back this government for everyday working people, which is why I think it's very helpful to like ground in, the Gilded Age and the organizing that happened to get us out of there and move us to the New Deal era.
And
So
even just one more note from just the Gilded Age, like that first sentence is America was ruled by robber barons, and like bringing that arc again, where it's not robber barons, we are with these tech barons, basically.
yes,
So it's all, coming circling back again. So we can definitely take everything we learned from moments like this and apply it now, you would say? History repeats itself.
and there is much to learn for me, which is why I think these case studies are a great example of pushing me out of despair and being like, this actually isn't new, and there are tools and tactics that people who have organized have implemented to get us out of this. So
And they did it without social media. Like there was some in the chat saying like, how are we gonna, like the revolution isn't televised because the news stations aren't saying anything. But think about it, back in all these case studies, they didn't have social media. They didn't have the news coverage that we have now. So we kind of do have an extra step up from them. All right. Looks like everyone's, oh, sorry. Do you want to finish off with that? Say something. Okay. Looks like everyone's coming back from breakouts. We're at 355. We were at 500, so we'll just give it a quick second. Hello, everyone. Thank you for doing the breakouts. Ooh, Serbia case. Yeah, we had one about Serbia. Yes, come in, 356. Good talks. Good. I hope everyone had a good time and just got to just sit in community for a second and enjoy talking to people, hearing, that's one of the things is just talking to people from different walks of life, different experiences than yourself. That's how we're gonna really like come together, is recognizing our differences and seeing where we fall in line with them. Great talk in the breakout room. Oh, looks like everyone had a good time in their breakout room. I see a lot of thank you for joining Fix Group 10. Oh, I love this. This makes my heart happy. How are we doing? We're at 3:55. All right, so as people are still filtering, I'm just going to keep moving on for the sake of time so we can keep moving. So everyone, so the prompt I kind of left you with when you went into the breakout rooms was again, everyone is back. Great. The prompt I left you with is, what are some factors you think were key? So if you were in our little breakout room with Deja and I, we read through the case study and we're going through, hey, some things that stick out, what made, what key factors stuck out during these case studies, during these moments in history. So if you can drop in the chat at least one or two that your group maybe discussed. Strike, strike, strike. Yes, withholding labor. Students, youth. Love that. Remember that one. Using humor and creativity. Yes, that was actually one of my favorite moments from the Serbia case study where they threw a birthday party for the guy and everyone came with handcuffs and prison uniforms. So there was like a theater to it. That was probably my favorite moment. That group did a lot of like funny theatrical satire things and it really like caught the public eye. I think there was one where you paid $1 to like kick a picture of the president. Yeah. Rise of a new political party. Yes, yes, yes. Mutual aid while we are boycotting. People need to be willing to be uncomfortable. Shifting public opinion. Yes. South Korea, leadership of trade unions. Yes. Maybe one more minute, drop in the chat. Making fun of rulers, yes. Decentralized grassroots organizing. Using imagery, language, and storytelling to create viral campaigns. Changing public opinion. Satire is a force that should never be underestimated. I think we could really find a place with that. If you watch that State of the Union, he was not happy with people laughing at him and the Democrats not talking. That really got under his skin. So satire might be the way to go. Community building. All right. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. So go to the next slide and we're going to kind of repeat what you just wrote. A lot of you said these 4 things. 1, turn popular opinion against them. 2, have a functional opposition party that multiple factions or different groups of people can see themselves in. 3, disruptive power or the threat of that. And 4, youth and unions often lead the way. So looking at these 4 factors in the Trump regime, there's some good news and there's some bad news. I'm going to go over really quickly each of these a little more in depth and then we'll move on. But just quick thumb check from everyone. How are we doing? How are we feeling? Thumbs up, thumbs down. How do you, a check-in as in, how are we doing with the status of these? How's our popular, let's do one at a time. Popular opinion against him. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Popular opinion against him. Getting thumbs up. I don't know if that's old or that is. Okay, so we're still saying popular opinion against him is pretty high. So let's talk about that. Trump keeps doing things that could be very unpopular. But still, he has the popular, he won with the popular vote. Like, as much as we hate to admit it, he was elected with the popular vote. So this won't be immediate. He keeps doing the things that are unpopular, but this is key. So write this down. It's social movements like Sunrise, whose job it is to tell the story of what he's doing. And then second, provide an alternative that people want to choose instead. So once again, it's a 2-part thing when we're turning popular opinion against someone. We have to tell the story. because people respond to stories more than facts. That's like the best way to deal with talking to, especially like MAGA, is telling a story, hitting their emotions, telling the story, and then second, providing an alternative. Second, let's go into have a functional opposition party that multiple factions can see themselves in. Let's do another thumb check. What do you think about our opposition party? Do we have an opposition party that, like, if you were in our chat or our breakout room about the American Gilded Age, everyone kind of moved under the Progressive Party, and that's how a lot of things happened. I love the laughing emojis. All right, I think we're all on the same page on this one. So yeah, let's be honest, the establishment Dem Party has been dragging their feet, and they struggle to appeal with people who don't trust the political system. I think we can all completely agree there. But over the last 8 years, because we always have to look at some positive, right? Yep, I saw it in the chat. Bernie, my man, personal opinion. I love my man Bernie. Right now, what is he doing right now? He's going out there and doing town halls in deep red states. And the name of his town halls is like how to fight the oligarchy, what we're talking about here. We also have AOC like figures, Jasmine Crockett, people who want to bring the party more to the working class. So that is another thing. I mean, our opposition party isn't quite there yet, but there's some movement. And, that's what we're here for, is push people that way. Third, disruptive power or a threat of that. How, thumbs up, thumbs down, midway. How do you think of our disruptive power? So I know a lot of people, there was that 50-51 strike. We try to do that blackout, February 20th blackout. We're seeing like a protest a day. In the Bay Area, at least, we have protests almost every day. Yeah, okay. So in the last few years, we have had historic levels of protest, but the country is very demobilized right now. Protesting isn't nearly at the levels we need to be. And I think you can see that now. You're going to protest right now. You're feeling them out. And the tactics at these protests that give people the leverage we need. So, fourth, I love this one because this is where Sunrise kind of comes in. Youth and unions often lead the way. So one little example, United Auto Workers have aligned their contracts for 2028. And the concept of I think I saw this in the chat, people were talking about it, general strike is far more possible than it has been in a long time. If you go to general strike us.com, 200,000 people have already pledged to strike. And at the same time, we do need millions more to make this work. And also students over the last decade have led huge walkouts for gun violence prevention, climate strikes, and encampments to end the genocide in Gaza. And also then this is a big part where Sunrise comes in, because once again, we are a youth-led movement. And so, that's why you're here. We're here to lead the way. So overall, we have some promising conditions, but we do have a lot of organizing to do to get to the conditions we need. And so I'd like to pass it over to Deja to get to our plan.
Great. Thanks, Ashmu. Yeah, I feel really excited when I think about high levels of mass non-cooperation and people actually just withdrawing from a system that does not work for us. I pray for the day. While we wait for that, we're going to get into what Sunrise's plan is to address some of this. So we're going to watch another video. We're going to pray to the tech gods. We're going to make it work so that folks can hear. And on the other side, we'll have some like calling in people to share what they're excited to do to help us win. So if we press the play button now.
Donald Trump is sliding our country into authoritarianism. And every day that passes, he is accelerating the climate crisis, taking away our social safety net, and potentially ending US democracy as we know it. In order to stop him, it's not enough to just vote him out of power. What we need to do is actually build a political system that will not let authoritarians like him rise to power again. That means actually having a democracy that works for everyday people, where oligarchs and billionaires can't buy out votes, where they don't get to run our society, where they don't get to make sure that they get rich while the rest of us suffer and see prices rise and see our futures burn away. We're facing a huge task. Donald Trump and Elon Musk have seized control of the state. What that means is that they are trying to control media platforms. They're trying to stop free press. They're trying to control social media. They're saying that they can overrule judges. They currently have control of Congress, the Senate, and the executive branch. And what that means is that we are not going to be able to stop them only through the regular channels. What we need is a mass movement that actually is able to undertake sustained, escalated non-cooperation. Often people think about power as if it starts all at the person at the top. But the truth is, society wouldn't operate if everyday people didn't help it operate. Schools would stop running if students stopped going to school. The economy would stop functioning if workers stopped going to work. People couldn't actually legislate if we actually sat down and blocked them from getting into buildings. There are things that we can do that allow or don't allow society to function every day. Everyday people have power beyond what they imagine. Over the next 4 years, we have a task ahead of us. We need to turn public opinion to our side, and we need to make sure that enough people agree with us that we can take sustained, escalated action to be able to save our planet and our democracy. There are 3 steps. First of all, we need to actually turn public opinion against Trump. The truth is that Trump currently has a 53% approval rating. That's not good for us. We need to expose his cruelty and corruption and show the lies that he's putting forward. He has a 53% approval rating because people feel like society isn't working for them, because they think that, hey, at least he's making a change. It's time for us to show that the change he is making is for the worse, that he is trying to enrich billionaires, that he is corrupt. Those issues are popular. People don't want corruption. People want their lives to be better. They just believe that Donald Trump will get them, even though he won't. By actually elevating the issues that people agree with, by talking about how Donald Trump is corrupt, by talking about how he is causing climate disasters, by talking about how he is friends with big oil, we can turn public opinion against him. We will talk to our neighbors and we will take escalated action so that millions more people can see our message, hear it, and be moved by it. If we do that well, polling can turn negative on Trump, and that will be reflected in the elections as well. Republicans who currently support Trump can get nervous about their allegiance. Maybe they will pull away their support, and we can make that impact felt in the 2026 midterm elections. Step 2 is that we need to put forward a vision of what society actually could look like and the way that Trump isn't delivering. Our lives could be better than what they are right now. We could have affordable housing. We could not be struggling to make ends meet. We wouldn't have to worry about retirement. We could live in a vision that is hopeful for our future. We could stop the climate crisis and have meaningful jobs and live in cities that were walkable and have food that is healthy. That is all within the capability of our government to do. And we need to make sure that people know that and are willing to actually demand that. With an alternative to Trump that is more visionary than just business as usual, people will be able to actually turn against him. If we continue saying that it's Trump or the current status quo, people won't want to. And all along the way, we need to be doing direct actions to build up to eventual mass non-cooperation. That means we might have school strikes every month. We might be walking out for just a minute of our work. It might mean we are pressuring Democrats in Congress to hold the line, to refuse to leave the building until they get their way. This is already starting to happen. And as everyday people start to pull away their support from the institutions that are holding Trump and his regime, his coalition will start to fall apart. He will not be actually able to implement his orders, and we will win. In 2028, the United Auto Workers has called for unions to align their contracts to go on strike. What that means is that in a few years, we have a huge opportunity. We have an opportunity for workers across the country to stop going to work and demand a better future for all of us, to demand that billionaires stay out of our government, demand that everyday people have a say in our democracy. And young people like us can make sure that climate is a part of that vision, can make sure that we actually build a future that is sustainable, that is bright, that is actually able to have good paying green jobs where our homes are safe from fire and the air is clean to breathe and the water is clean to drink. That's what we're fighting for.
Period. That is what we're fighting for. Okay. I really appreciate a lot of what Aru said and resonate with the desire for mass non-cooperation. And I see someone ask the question of why 2028, why not sooner? I feel this, and I think it takes a lot of organizing infrastructure to be ready for a general strike. And I don't know about y'all, but there is like a deep need to be setting up infrastructure around mutual aid, which some folks have like talked to or spoken to in the chat, and just a need to be building our organizations to be ready to organize in that moment. And that's some of it. And I also feel like the political conditions will accelerate the need to be engaging in acts of mass non-cooperation. And also that's when the United Auto Workers have like called for the strike and are planning to like align their contracts in 2028. And I think in concert with labor, we have significantly more power. But okay. I just want to invite folks to drop in the chat, like given some of what Aru shared around, like we need to shift public opinion. We need to be organizing and engaging in disruptive civil disobedience, and we need to be providing a clear, compelling vision. Like, what are you going to do to help us win in this plan? And then I'll recap some of the key learnings, and then I'll talk about what some of what Sunrise is currently doing, and how many of you all can plug in. But yeah, what are you going to help us do to win? What are you excited to do to help us win? And I will. Panda has a protest idea. I'm like, drop it in the chat. I'm organizing with my neighbors. I'm an artist, storyteller, musician. Ooh, these are coming fast. I will push on my pressure points in my community in the most creative ways. Excited to do more town halls. I want to join a chapter, but there isn't a local one. I see someone saying 2020 is too late. I agree. And so I'm like, we got to get to organizing. So we have the infrastructure to be building disruptive power. I'm like, it took them 360 plus days in Montgomery, Alabama to effectively win their demands in the Montgomery bus boycott. So like disruptive power doesn't happen overnight. And I think we're trying to figure out how we set the foundation to do that powerfully now. I see folks saying talk to friends and family, hashtag Tesla takedown, holding discussion groups to talk about everything and inspire action and create mutual aid. Growing food, question mark. Great. As those continue dropping in the chat, just want to like recap a couple key learnings from this section. So if we go to the next slide, the first is that we will not be able to do this alone. It is the reason that I'm an organizer, and it is the reason that Sunrise's theory of change is rooted in building people power. Because as a organized group of people, we are far more powerful when we unite and come together. So we cannot do this alone. The second is that we need to build disruptive power. If we actually look at the history of social change in this country, whether it is the Montgomery bus boycotts, the lunch counter sit-ins that happened that was led by the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, where they were actually disrupting an economic bottom line. If we look at labor and strikes, that got us like massive, 8-hour workdays, the weekend, it was disruption and mass non-cooperation that got us those wins in society. And then finally, like it starts now. And the organizing work has to start. It needed to start like 3 months ago, but it starts now. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about what Sunrise is doing now and what you can plug into to help us continue organizing towards 2026, towards 2028 and beyond. So to do some of this first, we need to make the next slide. We've talked about public opinion. We need to make the problem clear to everybody that billionaires are taking over our government. And Sunrise has been doing some of that through like organizing actions, through our comms and our social media, trying to make the connections and do more political education about oligarchy, about Trump. And we've also done this through some of our organizing. Hubs have been putting on oligarchy teach-ins across the country. There was like one in New York. I know Ashmove one has happened in the Bay, is happening. But like people are getting out in their communities and talking to people about the urgency and the threat of billionaires capturing our government and what we need to do about it. Also, Trump and his cronies are attempting to steal food from our mouths, healthcare from our families, a livable climate future for all of us. I'm personally pissed about that, all of these, honestly, but also green jobs from our community so that they can line the pockets of their billionaire buddies, which is just like corrupt. And Trump is proposing $2 trillion, $2 trillion, it's a lot of money, in cuts to climate, food, healthcare, and education so that he can pass off tax cuts to billionaires in a big spending bill that he's trying to cram through Congress. I don't know if folks are tracking this, reconciliation fight, but like that ain't right. So that's why Sunrise is taking action and speaking truth to power at local congressional offices to demand that they stand with everyday people and not billionaires. And so we're calling on folks to sign up to target your local Republican or corporate Democrat member of Congress and like put them on blast. Look, sometimes my faith in the political system at times is waning. But these people are elected and they deserve to feel the pressure and feel the fire. And so yeah, we're calling on folks to sign up and target your local Republican or corporate Democrat, and put them on blast and make them stand up for working people and reject handouts for billionaires. And some of what we're demanding for them is that they reject billionaire handouts, reject the defunding of our communities, and reject green job cuts. So no tax cuts for billionaires and fossil fuel companies. We want them to reject attempts to kill green jobs in wind and solar energy. And that's in red districts, that's in blue districts across the country. And we're also calling on them to oppose defunding our schools, healthcare, Social Security, and climate. And Republicans are facing the heat everywhere for the cruel and reckless actions of Trump. If like just 3 Republicans and all Democrats stood with people against Trump's big billionaire tax cut bill, like they would not be able to pass it. And so it is possible. In 2017, 12 Republicans voted against 12 Republicans voted against the Republicans' most recent similar bill, their Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And although that wasn't enough votes to like stop the bill from passing, like then it wasn't enough to stop the bill from passing, but like nonetheless, in 2017, 3 Republican senators did vote no. And so we're hoping that we can organize more Republicans to like stand up with the Democrats, find a spine, and like reject this current bill. And so curious how people are feeling hearing that. Are you interested in planning a speak out? If you are, you could just drop a little exclamation in the chat. We'll see some of those come through. Great. Angela, Juliet. And we'll go to the next slide too, just for folks to clarify what a speak out is. Next slide. Go to the next slide for folks who are like, I'm not familiar. This is new to me. But a speak out is a high visibility protest in a public location. You can elevate the stories of everyday people, people who have been impacted by some of the government cuts, who have been impacted by ICE raids, people sharing their stories and highlighting the demands that we've uplifted to the public, to people in our community, and to the media. These speakouts are about holding our representatives accountable. Yes, they are in office. Yes, many of them are corrupt, and many of us have like many feelings about them, but it is our duty and our job to continue keeping up the pressure. And so it's about holding our representatives accountable by speaking to their offices and speaking truth to power. And by linking together speakouts across the country, our options become like even more powerful. So yeah, I know some folks dropped exclamation points, but I just like really want to get a sense of commitment from folks. Like there's a link, I think Ketis and our chat moderators are like dropping them in the chat, but like who's organizing a speak out? It's like, I want to see one in New York City. I'm from Chicago. We got electeds there that need some pressuring. And as we go to the next slide, I just wanted to, as we transition to a close, because I know we have about 10 more minutes, what comes next now that we know the problem and how it's been solved in the past is that it's time for us to take action. And I talked about the speak outs. I'll actually go through a more broader suite of actions that you can take if you're like, I don't know, Deja, speak out sounds like a little bit much for me, but I like want to engage and I want to organize. We'll help you find some organizing to do. But yeah, so the next thing is we encourage folks to flyer in your community. And flyering may not sound that exciting, but I'm like, we have some really cool graphics. There are people who are probably looking for a solution out of this moment of despair that have no idea what to do. And flyering is an opportunity to appeal to people who are, in despair, who are like looking for ways to get plugged in. And so I actually look at flyers when I'm walking around my neighborhood or I'm like waiting at the grocery store. And we think this is a way for us to like connect with everyday people who are looking for an outlet and want to get involved. And so if we could drop the chat in the link for flyering, you can flyer in your community. It's a pretty easy distributed action tactic to do, or a tactic. Great. I see Caroline is committed. I can do flyers. Tyler is doing flyers. Yeah, we want us and we want to invite people into actions that like fit what you feel like best set up to do. and Anave, Marva, flyering, tips for printing. I think you can print it like UPS for pretty cheaply. But yeah. And then the next thing is if you're like, I'm ready, Deja, you talked about building organization, bringing more people into the movement, building collective power. I'm ready. You can become a member if you are under 35. We organize young people under 35. And you can sign up to become a member at smvmt.org/member. If we could get that in the chat. I see, yeah, if you're a proud member, you can also drop that in the chat as well. I see, I think it's Giuseppe, some folks saying that they're members. And what it means to be a member is like you're making a commitment to join the legacy of, tens to hopefully someday hundreds of thousands of young people that are ready to organize, ready to build people power, and ready to take action and stand up to Trump environment. And then if you're like, I'm not under 35, I've kind of aged a little bit. I also encourage you to become a supporter. So you can do that at smvmt.org/supporter. And that will give you information on the other ways that you can like plug in and support the organizing in Sunrise Movement. Yeah, I know there were some folks that were like, I'm 40, I'm a little older, but I'm here and I want to organize. And so I encourage folks to check out the supporter page at smvmt.org/supporter. And then just finally to close, we like opened with the speak out tactic. Really want to hammer that like one of the most powerful things that we can be doing in this moment is speaking truth to power. And so really encourage people to organize speak outs. And for those speak outs, we are like prioritizing targeting Republicans and corporate Democrats. To put pressure ahead of the action, we're calling on folks to tweet and post Instagrams through social media. And we'll have information on that when you sign out. And we also have ways for people to like find their members of Congress, and we encourage you to call them before you like do a speak out as a way to sort of escalate. And then when you plan your speak outs, when you sign up, you'll find more information on like what's the good and what's the best, day to plan this action, and then what roles do I need and what are the next steps for planning. So if you want to get more some of the answers to those questions, I encourage you to again sign up for organizing a speak out. And yeah, I see somebody says I have friends of all ages. Let's see, I'm checking this chat. Okay, I'm gonna kick it over to Ashmu to just close us with some feedback, and then close us officially for this teach-in.
Thank you so much, Deja. I know that was a lot, everyone. You have made it to the end of our teach-in. Thank you. Give yourselves a hand. Thank you to our moderators, everyone. Just to close out, just want to give you a moment. If you could do us a favor, scan this QR code up on your screen to submit feedback. A feedback survey on this training. The results of this survey will help us understand what worked about this training, what can be improved, video, sound, maybe. Any feedback you give is really appreciated. We're always learning and growing, and we want to get better as we do this. Also, I do really want to encourage everyone to become an official member. It's on that right side. Scan that QR code. Deja, oh, my water. Sorry. Plugged it in for a minute there, but we do have a responsibility to bring thousands more into our movement and call for the new world we want to live in, the world we need, a world that ensures everyone has housing, a living wage job, healthcare, and we love this, a livable planet. So that's what we can do if we come together over the next few months and seize this moment. Every action helps us get closer to this mass movement that will be needed to take on the federal government and pass the policies needed to save our future. We can't stop this climate crisis alone. There's some great people in these organizations right now, but we're all in this together. We need all of us to be in this together to unite against the fossil fuel industry and the politicians that have been standing in our way. So once again, we'd love if you became a member, you find a hub near you. And if there's not a hub near you, start one. Would be a great option. We have lots of resources to help you get started. It can just be 2 or 3 of you. All these movements start somewhere. So please fill out the QR codes. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you again, everyone, for being in the chat. Thank you for having us. Sorry, go ahead, Deja.
Great. And if we could just cue the song. Thank you so much for journeying with us over the last 90 minutes. Just gonna look at the chat to see if there are any other final questions. I see folks having questions about the like 5. Yeah, there are some really amazing groups like Indivisible that are like organizing adults. There just is a history of folks doing like youth constituency organizing, whether it's Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SDS, like there is just a role we have in like building a strong culture and community of young people. But we partner with many groups in New York City. We have folks over 35 that are like helping us do jail support and different types of things. And so don't want it to seem like we do not want folks. We need everybody to stop the climate crisis.
Which side are you on now? Which side are you on? Which side are you on now? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
As we're closing out, I want to share that we're at 26 speak outs and 25 firing people sign up for. So keep signing up as well.
Storm surge and fire.